that we see during this tournament are Paladins and Druids. What do you think about that, Raven?
Yeah, I mean, the Paladin ban sort of swings both ways, depending on what classes you brought yourself. The Paladin, I mean, everyone knows Mysterious Challenger and the Secret Paladin, the strength of that deck alone, and the fact that Mysterious Challenger itself is such a swingy card and can just win you games pretty much on its own. So the ban is aimed that way, but also we see some players bring mid-range Paladin as well. So, which is really strong versus a lot of warriors and people are favouring warrior at the moment to deal with things like freeze mage and stuff. So, some interesting sort of counter picking and just removing the class straight up is pretty interesting from both players. But also, I imagine if they practice together and they probably discuss strategy pretty in depth, that they will know that the Paladin ban's probably the top ban for the tournament. So, maybe the decks are pretty similar. Looking at the decks, have they got mirrored decks? Yeah, I think they brought the same classes, right?
Two
druids,
druid,
two warriors.
druid, warrior.
Are they playing the same
same
decks?
classes, but not necessarily the same decks? We'll have to see how that goes. They both start with Warlock, I assume. We'll see how that goes.
No, I think one's Druid.
Yeah, there's one Druid. Okay.
Okay, so Powder started on his Warlock and Spose started with his Druid, by the looks of things. Is this... This just looks like handlock from Powder.
Yes, it is a handlock. It is a handlock. Neyria was playing a combo lock yesterday, but unfortunately he lost his game, so we'll not be seeing that cool new deck. New, maybe not exactly new, but...
reborn deck.
Yeah, exactly. For now, we'll just see the usual handlock. And Spo has a really good opening hand, I would say. Big Game Hunter and a Keeper against handlock. Seems to be
they're the two cards you want. You can answer that turn 4 no matter what happens. You can silence off the Twilight Drake, or you can obviously shoot down the 8/8. And you probably want the Giant over the Twilight Drake just because it's such an easy kill. But also you can just play Dr. Boom, which is a pretty good card, I think. And especially, oh my god, when the Giant comes up, this is the last thing you want to see. You've already seen the Druid do Druid things and ruin your game already, and then you play Giant, and then he just goes, oh, by the way, I've got big game on there. And then he probably can follow up with the Twilight Drake and be like, oh, by the way, I've got Keeper of the Grove and Wrath to draw a card. It's like, and then, you just see Powder hit concede.
I guess you can just sub a draw here. Exactly what Spose does. That's 9, 12, 15, 19, 22 damage.
Oh, God. And he has Keeper of the Grove for next. I mean, we are probably going to see the Giant into the Boom and then play Heal Box. I think that's just the only option now. Because with 2 Boom Bots, you can't leave them up on 2 health. Like when you just sat with 2 health, it's
too
much of a problem. It's going to kill you. The second you leave it up, it's over.
Yeah. So now, for my god!
Wow. Oh, and there's Powder's reaction. So, guys, in case you've never played Hearthstone before, this is Druid and what Druid does.
10-6 kill with
getting Druided is a thing.
Wow. This is why people ban Druid.
Yeah.
This is the only reason why people ban Druid. This is because there's Innervate, this is because there's Wild Growth, and there's Aspirant. Those 3 cards are just skewing, bending the rules of the game.
Something like that has happened to everyone, and it's kind of interesting to see, obviously, Powder's reaction, pretty unhappy, especially with the second Savage Roar, but also Spo sort of normally very calm and collected sort of face, and then he's just got that slight smile, and it's like, yeah, I just did that to my friend. Oh well, next game. So Spo's going to have the Druid again, and Powder's actually lost his Warlock, so he just has his Druid and his Warrior left. I mean, the problem with the 2 Druid mirrors is if Powder's playing the mid-range Druid, then you both sort of hoping you get the ramp and the other doesn't, which again can force you to run away with the game when you do draw that early ramp and your opponent doesn't in the matchup. So it's a bit of a risky one. Whereas the problem though as well is the Warrior's not the best deck versus Druid either. Quite weak to Druid, if anything.
This is something I discussed yesterday a lot with Spo and Powder while casting, and it seems like people who really like the Warrior class, they always tend to say, well, Warrior is now favored against Druid. And everyone else It's like, no, man. Still, Druid just takes the lead in the match. Like, still can just...
Well, I think with True Heart and things like it's not as bad as it was, but you could just the game can still just end. Like the Druid can still do. It's still difficult to remove minions for the warrior, and it's a lot of potential burst damage. Whereas the warrior wants to go the game really late and just build up all the armor and focus on the removal. But the guys have just gone for the double the Druid mirror. We see Wild, I think that's after Mulligan, Wild Growth, but then just Druid the Claw and Boom for spell. So unless he draws into an Innovate early on, maybe he just used up all his Druid luck in the first game. Whereas Powder's got a pretty reasonable hand straight off the bat, never mind without any Mulligan. Can you even Mulligan this?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable. And yeah, it looks like Powder goes for the full keep, which is pretty nice.
I mean, you have a decent opening. I guess you can even just coin out the Danasis in turn 1.
Yeah, coin out the Danasis and go in. You can go straight
turn
into
3
Shredder.
into Druid of the... No, you don't have to. You can just innervate the Claw and then into Shredder and then into Shredder, which is kind of mana inefficient on turn 5, but it's still very powerful.
Yeah, it's still pretty okay when you're playing these minions on turn 3.
Yes. And this might end as fast as the first game.
Yeah. See both players doing what Druids do, to slam down what they can early on.
Oh, bad Shredder placement! No! And spoiler.
Oh, natural mistake. Powder doesn't even respond, and I'm just gonna... Since there is a delay on this, I'm gonna wait for Twitch chat to catch up and see what everyone says about that, because it's the worst crime you can commit as a pro player.
Yes, exactly.
Do that on stream, Twitch will have their words with you. So Double Shade is actually pretty interesting because it can come down. It's a really decent turn 6 play because it's not like Druids.
7 play.
Yeah, it's not like Druids are running Thalnos anymore. So the spell power swipe is much harder to do because you need the Azure Drake if it's knocking around. Speaking of swipe, I've called the next card draw again. That is actually going to help a little bit, make it a bit easier for the...
I guess you would just play Pilot Shredder anyway, It makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just looking at potential trades. Oh.
Well, you have no pirates, so it makes sense.
No, it's a shame it doesn't work with mechs. That would have been interesting to snipe off the 2 damage off the air. And you can, at this point, especially, he has swipes, he has some burn. You can ignore the Shredder because it's just not going to do too much. Druid of the Claw.
I have to say that you're kind of pushed to play it.
Yeah.
That still doesn't really help because you are still so behind that your opponent will just push for damage every single turn.
The problem is, if you don't taunt up, you're dead to Savage Roar. So that's a bit of a problem. So I think he has to play Druid of the Claw and taunt. It's a real tough one. But again, with swipe in hand that we can see, obviously, it's still not the best. It's just a rough position, and we've just seen the tables turned a little bit. Where we saw Spo get a super strong start with the Druid, and then Powder's now actually run away, which is quite lucky to actually, get it, when it can go either way, as strong as the Druid mirror can. It's pretty good to be on the right side of that one.
Yeah. How much damage can you squeeze? 14 damage this turn and just Force of Nature next turn. I guess this is the play.
Yeah, it's not like Druid normally runs Defender of Argus either, so it's not like the amount of minions on board is going to cause a problem with Defender of Argus. So,
wait. What about if you just swipe the Shrinkmeister? Because otherwise, your opponent will be able to clear your minions, and this way you will ensure that one will be alive. So it is better to swipe the Shrinkmeister.
Because if you look, like you're almost guaranteed the damage anyway, right?
Yes, exactly. And now Spo has to play the Druid of the Claw in taunt mode and just hero power and deal 1 damage to the face. Trade with both minions, maybe even trade with the Pulse Shredder just to go for the Doomsayer. Probably not.
I think because he's on 7 health, he has to just just drop everything down. And he chose to try and play Dr. Boom to try and pull back the game. He played Druid of the Claw. Understandable, it probably keeps him alive, probably, but it will almost certainly die anyway, and then you just 1 turn later you're in the same position. So the Dr. Boom was the play there to try and forward and actually take the game, but fortunately we see Spo drop the game there, so it's 1-1 now. It's
1-1, and those were some blitz fast games. I mean, that took like 10 minutes, I guess.
Yeah, both players either side did the druid thing, which doesn't like happen. It happens often, but not too often in like 2 consecutive games. I can see the suppose warrior get picked over against Powder's druid. We're gonna see what you think on. So who do you think's favored then? Who's gonna take this match?
Well, I'll always say that I'm on the druid wagon here. You know, I always say that the druid, even with a bad start, can just have some insane mid-range and late-game endings with double combo, like Force of Nature, double Savage, because usually you don't have necessarily to use the Savage during the game. Neither do you do the same with the Force of Nature, so you can just wait for the Emperor and just, you know, get discount on those cards and just kill your opponent at some point of the game with just insane hand damage.
Yeah, because the druids like top decks are pretty decent. I mean, warrior top decks late game are either pretty strong or really bad in terms of like top decking a Acolyte of Pain or something. But the druid minions are normally pretty beefy, and it's a real tough one to call at this moment because we can see that Powder's got a pretty decent hand and a good start. A bit of lack in the turn, 4 play now, I guess. But on Spo's side, if he holds off enough, which it looks like he's doing to a large extent, he does have Dr. Boom, he has Grom, he has Sylvanas into Boom, and then potentially into Grom if, you know, he gets himself into that position. And the weapon already equipped, so pretty good. He can drop the Acolyte this turn and get another card draw if he really wants to. Yeah,
yep. Let's
probably see what pops out the trailer.
Yeah, exactly.
Although he is on 22 health at this point, and there's other than, you know, he gained 24 now with the 2 Armorsmith procs, but the Armorsmith's gone, and oh my god, that mini buff.
It's not.
What's it called? The Micro Machine.
Right.
It's actually gonna trade.
Well, most of the minions that will go from the Palace are able to trade, but he doesn't even do that. He just favors the damage, and I like that because Warrior usually will have an option to play 1 card at one time in a turn, right? Unless it's a Execute or Shield Slam. So giving him 1 additional card not necessarily gives him so much advantage, right? It's not a Freeze Mage who relies heavily on cards like Ice Block and Mad Scientist. So, yeah.
And now it sort of forces Spo to actually kill it himself anyway, because you can't just leave that card on the board, especially as a druid, or against a druid, should I say, that has combo. And Emperor going down means he can combo next turn if needed. So if anything gets left on the board, what would it be? It wouldn't be quite lethal, but it would be close.
Wow, he's using the Death Spider instead of the shit. I didn't see that thing, to be honest.
That's just game, right?
Oh, this?
Yeah.
Oh,
oh my god, the Micro Machine doing work. 6 attack from the Micro Machine.
Wow. Well, that was fast.
Yeah, another fast game. Druid doing druid things. And again,
they're both really playing aggressively. They are not like wasting any time.
No. Do you think these guys have got somewhere to be? Like they're just like, right, let's just slam. There's no time. We're not going to sit and think about plays. We're going to just slam down anything that glows green every turn and smoke, and then that's it. See who wins after that.
I mean, I love how those 2 players are playing really aggressively, because usually that's how you win in Hearthstone. But sometimes reckless play, especially in single elimination, might cost you too much. Yeah. And you have to wager like which option might be the best one. And to be honest, when he had such a slow hand this game with the Warrior, I would have assumed that he would have just shield block, shield slam the Emperor, because it's just so important to deal with that without taking the 5 damage, right? It's so much.
Yeah, like we said, because he had Sylvanas, Boom, Grom, you know, like he had the later stuff. He's going to do well later on. Like it was really weird that he decided to go aggressive, especially. Yeah, it's a bit of an awkward one. But also on the flip side of that, just because you've seen Emperor going into turn 7 doesn't mean he has combo.
Yeah, of course.
And a lot of players, especially versus Druid, play too safe. Like they can actually lose matches because you play around the combo too much and play so defensive and so careful that you're playing you're not getting the most out your resources and actually lose the game that way. So there's definitely something to be said for being a bit more aggressive and a bit more playing to actually close out the game. But with the hand that we saw Spo had, it definitely would have benefited him to play a bit slower.
Yeah, and now Spoke plays the handlock, and Powder will play Druid Things. And he has Wild Growth, he has a coin, he has one Saboteur, and a low tip.
Yeah. Again, the curve's looking pretty reasonable. There is a turn 4 play for Spo in the form of the Drake, and we don't see the silence yet from the Powder, so that's reasonable. But again, the Wild Growth, is that every single Druid game we've seen with ramp? Every single one?
Yes, every single one gets the ramp. Every single one gets the ramp, every single one gets the Saboteur, and in this case, well, both players have good hands. Both Belchers are something that you want to have against Druid, because they are really hard to remove.
Yeah. And now the low third, we're probably just going to see face. And also, the ramp into good minions. It's not like you just ramp because you have it, and then it's like you've got to play something inefficient. There's always been Shredders or Druid of the Claw to get into, so pretty nuts. But now with the Lotheb down, the Belch is nowhere near as good, because the Lotheb just deals with it, and because he can only play Lotheb this turn, he can only play Belcher this turn, and nothing else as well. It's not like he can try and do something to Lotheb to deal with it as well. So Shredder goes down into a 2-1.
Oh, that's not
the Druid card, but.
So Engine of Law comes down, because you can trade with the Belchers, it's not that bad. Fortunately for Powder, there will be an option to use his Dark Bomb to finish off the Low Tip, and Mortal Coil to finish off the Engine of Lore, so that's something. But let's see if that's actually the correct turn. Otherwise, you can just use Belcher and slam.
Is he just gonna Shadow Flame Coil? Oh no, he doesn't have the mana, right?
Yeah, no, doesn't. Well, there is the mana, but there's no point in doing that. So he wants to push his opponent to kill the Ancient Watcher, because that's the same outcome as attacking with the Twilight Drake, but you have the your Ancient Watcher will actually have some value, because there's no way your opponent will use Keeper on that to go through.
Yeah. And then look at this hand, though. Look for a start. Look at the hand size from Powder, and then look at the fact that he has like Emperor alongside things like Innovate, Savage Roar, Druid of the Claw, Swipe. It's like,
but there's still no Force of Nature. So
no, he's still lacking that.
But next turn he can just drop the Emperor, drop the Darnassus Aspirant, and that's really scary.
Yeah, and then let Spo try and answer. So Spo again playing aggressive, which again with Handlock, not something you see too often. It's normally a much later game deck because the draws are so much more powerful than most other decks on average. But he's just going hyper aggressive, forcing the Druid to actually trade and deal with the Warlock's minions, as opposed to setting up combo for himself. What
do you think about the Emperor this turn? I think it has just too much value to not do it. Right?
I think, yeah,
and Ref
even like.
We can ref the Sunfield Protector just to play around his trade, right? Because then he's forced to use the second Mortal Coil, or he has to use the second Dark Bomb, or use the Defender of Argus, which is not exactly what he wants to do right now.
Yeah, but I completely agree. Sometimes it might not look perfect, but when you drop an Emperor with so many cards in hand, and you're not going to die next turn because of it, it's almost always worth it. Because just look at the possibilities of next turn. You can almost just play everything. Especially with the Innovate in hand, it's crazy.
Yeah, let's think about it. There's 9 mana, 11 mana available. And you can play Dark... Druid of the Claw for 4 mana, so 7 mana available. Savage Roar for 2, so that's 6. Squeeze in the Swipe. That's basically it. So how much damage is that? Depends how many minions are left on the board. Because... I guess
it's a lot. Is all I'm gonna say. A lot.
Shadow Flame with the second Ancient Watcher, which allows him to trade with every single minion on the board, and it gets a little tougher for Powder, but he can just instantly refill the board, and he's not afraid of being burst down by the Handlock, because usually how Handlock is bursting down his opponent is with just Hellfire, Dark Bomb. And that's it.
And because of that Shadow Flame now, you can build the board up again. And the odds are your opponent doesn't have another board clear. So I really like this play. You can get the Druid of the Claw out, set that up, get the Keeper of the Grove, and most importantly, because he's got so much burn in hand, he doesn't need to charge the Druid and make it easier for Spo to play Molten Giants. So now, even though like he only has one and no taunt givers, so it wouldn't have been amazing. If he had double Molten and taunt givers, then that's how you lock the game down on the Warlock side. But he's completely negated that by just letting the Warlock sit at 20 health. And now there's a really awkward issue with double heal bot. Playing one heal bot does nothing. To a certain extent, it puts him out of potential of combo range, but then he just attacks, and then you're back to square one again next turn. Lotheb does stop combo, but again, just doesn't do much to the board because it gives your opponent another turn to fill up. The Ragnaros did actually snipe the best target there, so that was pretty big.
Yeah, that's always like that, right?
Yeah.
For your opponents, of course. So now the Big Game Hunter for 2 mana, of course, will have insane value. We did saw one Shadow Flame, we didn't see any Hellfires yet, right?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah. Just one Shadow Flame so far. But again, this is just more Emperor value. We just see 5 mana BGH Shredder.
There's
there's Hellfire, but is it gonna...
Does it make any difference? You can just play low tip to ensure that your opponent will not combo you next turn, but a single Savage Roar does
even with Lothar, just
10 damage. 10 damage for a not discounted Savage Roar for 8 mana, so you can squeeze 10 damage, 11 damage with a single Savage Roar.
So can Lothar heal bot? Is that what he's gone for? Okay.
11, 15, 17, 21, 25. One of lethal. I guess you go for it anyway. Because that's the biggest...
The problem is, if you go for it, and I mean, I know we can see this, so it's much easier for us, but if you go for something like that, and you just drop Draxus, it's a bit of a problem. Or even double Molten Taunt Heal. Like, you sort of, you've blown a lot of burst, and then you've already used the silence to not get through the taunts.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a tough one. I kind of like holding on to this, because look at his board. Like, what's he afraid of? And it's like he can just combo, he can just have a draw next turn as well as potentially.
Yes, but if he plays Jaraxxus, right, just to save himself from that 1 HP, that's his turn, and he has unloaded on the board, right? Oh no, wait, that was an Ancient Heal board.
Yeah.
But still, he can only deal with 2 minions, and 2 minions are left on the board,
True,
which is 6 damage, and you have
Powder
Swipe.
had Swipe, right? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Powder did have Swipe.
So I mean.
The only issue is though, like, and we're going just deeper and deeper down this hole, but like, if he could play like Molten Taunt Heal bot.
Okay,
like,
of course, this will be problematic
because he's not seen any Moltens yet. That's the scary bit, and he's lost his BGH as well, so there's no easy removal. He's took BGH and the silent, so you're running low on actual ways to deal with the Moltens. But I mean, not drawing into the Force of Nature is a bit crazy. Why is this Druid game going so long? This doesn't feel right. Why are we not done with the series already? Look, both players are doing Druid things.
Well, now it's 1 of lethal again.
Sylvanas is a strong play, though. It demands a silence, and even if it's silenced, it's a 5/5. So really threatening, and if it's not silenced, it's definitely scary for the Warlock. And
do you think you should go for the attack right now? Because your opponent is quite low. If he taps, he has Molten Giants for 4 mana, double Molten Giants for 4 mana. So I guess the attack is justified here.
Yeah, because it doesn't change enough to not attack now because it's so late in the game. We are going to see double Molten, but there's no taunt.
So that doesn't necessarily help him.
11, there's 14. So there's lethal if he plays Draxus on board. So if you double Molten Draxus, it's lethal. He could double Molten Healbot Dark Bomb the 4/3.
Yeah.
But then the issue is that you've just played double Molten into Sylvanas. So then you're just giving your opponent a Molten Giant. And it's not like you've even taunted them up, so there's still threat from combo anyway. It's just a really rough position here, and I don't really know how the Warlock can come back. I don't think there's any way for the Warlock to come back at this point, actually. Going for the heroic tap. Oh!
Well, that's a good tap.
Yeah, I mean...
Does it save him?
He can't Dart Bomb now, though. Oh, he can Dart Bomb, but he can't heal.
Yes, and that's my question. Is he able to...
Silences and Dart Bombs.
So Savage Roar...
7,
7, now it's 9... He's not able to win.
He can Savage Roar and Clay, but that's it. So
yeah, he needs his Force of Nature right now from the top of the deck.
Is the Emperor going to be the... Ooh.
Nope.
I mean, I say ooh. This is still a pretty good card, right?
Yeah, it is, but he's at 10 HP. That's the problem. And he has now to clear one of the giants. He has to use the...
Belcher.
Wait, is he dead?
Hang on, then the owl kills the Belcher.
Wait, he's dead, right?
The owl kills the second part of the Belcher, doesn't it?
He had to use the Savage Roar to survive the game.
Yeah. Do you think he just snap played the Dr. Boom? Yeah, Powder.
Yeah.
Powder saw Dr. Boom
annoying.
and played it, and he's punished. The one time a player's been punished for playing Dr. Boom.
He should have played the Savage Roar to survive.
He's not too happy with himself either, which is understandable. That's crazy, actually.
Look at him. Look at him.
That tap into Argus was crazy. If that was any card that wasn't a taunt, that was game regardless. But getting the Argus and then Powder playing maybe a little bit too quickly with the Dr. Boom really punished him there, actually.
Yeah, he seems like he's playing too fast. Way too fast, way too furious.
Those early Druid games just set these players up for just
set the pace of the game.
Definitely. Definitely.
So now Powder will be left with his Druid, right? No, wait, he just... What I'm talking
Powder
about.
has his
Warlock
Warrior
versus Warrior. Yes. Okay, so this is a game we already saw between those two players.
He has his... does he have his Warlock left as well? Oh no, he played Warlock first, right? And spoke.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's 2-2 now, right?
Yes, it's
So it's the
2-2.
Warrior
That's the last game, Warlock versus Warrior.
Oh yeah, Warlock versus... God, I'm getting... The class, because they're both playing the same classes, it's so confusing to keep up with. Okay, so who do you like in this matchup?
I think it's a very similar matchup from both sides. You can't really favor one class over the second one because it all depends if Warrior gets the answers to the early threats, right?
Yeah.
Because from my perspective, Handlock is the beatdown in this match, so he wants to get that tin for Twilight Drake, tin for Mountain Giant to just smash the damage in, and Warrior has to deal with those minions.
Yeah, because I think that becomes really straightforward when you put yourself in each position. And as the Warlock, you want the turn 4 minion. As the Warrior, all you want to see is something like Taskmaster Execute or beat Big Game on in this matchup, because you just want to be able to get out, deal with the Giants really quickly, or the Twilight Drakes if needed, and really just slow the Warlock down. So I completely agree there. And the Owl coming down onto the 1-3, which is pretty okay, because this matchup could go on for a little while, and reducing the Warrior's card draw to reduce those chances of getting the answers is pretty huge, actually.
True. And the Emperor is still far away, but it will make a huge difference for a small card like Mortal Coil, but in this matchup this might change a lot, because usually, from my perspective, cards for 0 mana have a huge impact on the games, because they don't care about the mana efficiency, right? You just can squeeze that every single turn, and this is why Innervate is so powerful. This is why cards that always can be squeezed everywhere, imagine just Executes and Whirlwind for 0 mana, like we have seen that in the first iteration of Patrons.
I was going to say, look at Patron. The second you get Thaurissan down and you've got Whirlwinds in hand, you are very, very happy. Like in the previous version, even in the current version of Patron, if you choose to play Thaurissan. But yeah, I mean, looking at the hand now, I mean, that card draw has been reduced straight down for Powder by Spell Silence in the Acolyte. You can see that the combination of that with the Warlock hero power means Spell's so far ahead, and that's going to be a cheap Mountain Giant next turn. Interesting that he's just I mean, again, this is a thing where the Mountain Giant looked pretty nice, but Thaurissan on a million cards is pretty nice as well, right?
Definitely. Well, it's easy to deal with it with the bash from Powder's perspective, but now there's a lot of threats that he has. Even with the one Big Game Hunter, there's still a lot of power on board that will be played every single turn. Yeah.
How much would you like? But obviously, depending on what we see next turn, that you could actually get in and then use Execute and push for more damage. For the 7 attack. I suppose it is pretty weak to Big Game Hunter though, which is a bit rough. 2 mana Mountain Giant. That's what you want to see.
Yep. Oh, and that's an important card. Jaraxxus in this matchup will ensure the Warlock player to have threats, to have that pressure every single turn. Too bad for him that he didn't get the discount on it.
Yeah, I was just gonna. Just a turn or so too late there. But what's nice is, at least for Warlock, is that on 21 health, depending on the board state, sometimes you're pretty happy just slamming Draxus. As long as you're in a steady-ish board state, because then you start pumping out those 6/6s, and the Warrior he has to answer them, but runs out of answers really quickly. The Hellfire is going to come down for 3 mana, clear up the board, and the Lothar might actually be a pretty nice setup for Draxus next turn. It does look out his Moltons, though, I guess, which is a bit
Yeah, but the problem with the Ysera might be something it's really hard to chew on, right?
Yeah.
You don't have an easy way to deal with that. Most of the 100 players are not playing Siphon Soul anymore. That's the problem. And he doesn't go for Draxus.
Yeah, I think getting the Mountain Giant down now is good, because if you don't play it this turn, are you going to actually find space to play it as the game goes on? It's going to be real strong, because then if you play Draxus, for example,
you can play
Molten
Giants, yes.
Yeah, you lose the Moltons, and then you lose live tap to make the Mountain Giants easy to play, and so on. So getting that down, it's going to soak up the Execute. So there's BGH and Execute used. But again, is there an answer to Ysera? Don't.
Not really.
So
there's no silence.
Every single turn Ysera stays on the board. It's similar to Emperor. The game just becomes harder and harder, and Powder's shaking his head there as he draws a little bit dead compared to what he needs on the board.
But still, minions are not bad. It's basically you get free card draw. So you can think of it like
it's definitely an issue drawing 5 health minions when Ysera's proc twice. And when you don't want to see Ysera Awakens is the time you do see it. So it's definitely a bit of a worry. I mean, there's even quite a lot of damage represented on the board now. Even the 4 pokes from Ysera is pretty nice.
Yeah. So now my Ultimate Run has to be cast. Oh wow. Well.
Wow was a good word there.
Well, you're pushed to do that. That's the problem.
Yeah, and now the Molten Giant's gone just to Shadow Flame. Good Shadow Flame. It means you can deal with a lot of the board. But the Warrior's on 29, and you've just lost an 8/8. So there's one of your big guys. So I wouldn't be too surprised if what's going to come down this turn. He's probably going to play Dragon, right? Oh, Baron Geddon can just play this. Okay.
Yeah, Baron Geddon setup is perfect in this situation because you cleared the board without any kind of commitment from your side, apart from playing a minion, and that's it.
Yeah, and this is a problem as well, is because there's so much damage on the board, there's just no option of Draxus this turn at all. And like you said, because it didn't get reduced, you can't even do the the Draxus hero power, which is always quite nice to play it and then drop a 6/6 the same turn. So we're gonna have to see Powder sort of Draxus a little bit dead at the moment. Another tap into Dr. Boom, but I don't think he's gonna make the same mistake as last game and just drop that guy down. He's gonna double heal by the looks of things.
Yeah, well, he has to double heal ball because as you said, he's really low. He's just can be just burst down by anything. And now Powder can be super aggressive. He can just ignore those minions, attack with the weapon for 1 AoE, and then just the Baron Geddon will finish them off.
Yeah, and obviously that's an insane clear. And also, 1 Molten's gone, 2 heal bots are gone. What are you actually afraid of at this point? And if he plays the Draxus, as we've mentioned a couple of times, that's his whole turn to set himself to 15. Look at the amount of damage he has; it's insane.
And now the Boombots will also deal damage to the face, so that is just
so much pressure.
Insane amount of pressure. How much damage was that?
Well, I didn't see, but it put him to 7. There was 1 from the last Boombot.
So that was 12, right? So 5 damage from the Boombots.
Not terrible.
But the big game hunter draw was kinda clutch.
Yeah, that's definitely decent. And the fact that he can follow up with he's got Belcher as well to just squeeze the Belcher in.
Why Belcher when you can just play Twilight Drake this turn? I mean,
Grom combo?
Okay, Grom, yeah, okay. Grom is the only possibility to win the game. Yeah.
Because what the Belcher does as well is make the chance of him now Draxusing so much safer. Because the Warrior probably isn't going to clear the full Belcher and the big game as well. Oh
yeah, and it doubles the humanity.
Oh my, that's
just perfect.
Huge. Oh my god. Suddenly, the game, I think, swung the other way. Brawl's going to be really good, but the issue is he can only brawl once at the moment, and his bow's going to be pumping out those 6/6s every single turn going forward. And he still has Dr. Boom and Argus.
That's a very good turn. And the thing that you said about the Belcher before the Drax setup was very important for Powder. Sorry, for Spo, because that's the only way of ensuring that your next turn will be safe.
Yeah, yeah. Because like we said, otherwise you're just never going to play it. And Ragnaros is a pretty nice card as well. Yeah, it doesn't need to. By the way, it doesn't need to play Ragnaros this turn.
There's no way you can
use it for the 8 damage to finish the game. But this is insane. I mean, and this is the issue. The brawl comes down. Best case scenario, the 2/3 survives, and then you kill it, and then they just plays another 6/6 and Ragnaros.
And how do we deal with that?
Yeah, you don't, and then that might just be game.
7 damage to the face, and well,
Three from the
15,
weapon.
18. Yeah, that's game.
Yeah. Oh wow, what a turnaround!
That's it. Spo takes the game when it didn't look like a very favorable situation for him in general with this matchup.
The Molten Giant, there's the shot from Spo on the camera there, but the Molten Giant draw right before Jiraxxus was massive there. To just slam Molten Jiraxxus behind a Belcher was huge. Like, that was such a swing turn. It's insane.
Yeah, that's true. And congratulations to Spo. I mean, he played really well. I mean, even though he was playing really fast in most situations, his decisions were on point, especially with the handlock in the handlock games. Powder was on the opposite end of the stick, I would say. He was playing really fast, but he made some mistakes because of that. So it's very important for everyone to notice those things that are happening in the competitive games, because there are like players that are super fast, and there are players like players that are super fast like Dog, like Powder, Expo, and then you see on the other end players like Life Coach, like Thais, like Stan Sivka, who are just super slow with decisions, but it helps them pick the correct one, right? So
yeah, it's one of those things as well. So like the time you have in a turn is a resource you have in the game, and it's your choice how you use that. And because you have the time, you just may as well use it. You know, a lot of the time anyway. Like, I normally like to sit and take my time if it's later stages of the game. So you just may as well use what you have to your advantage.
Yeah, exactly. But congratulations to Spoke. He'll be playing against a winner between Ponyhoff and Cypher. But before that, we'll be seeing the match between Mortal Leopard and Xixos. So we're just going into that short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.